My name is Adam and welcome back to my channel where I make a tabletop role-playing game from scratch on camera. Now, before we start today's episode, I just want to remind you of the 96 likes. Before I started this project of Explorers RPG, I have been using this book to just note down different stuff that is role-playing related. And, well, all of this is fun and interesting for world builders, for role players and so on. So 96 likes and I will go through all the 96 pages that I have here. And while you're down there, please press the subscribe button because, well, I want subscribers. In today's episode, we're going to talk about skills and how to implement them, at least in my mind, implement them correctly in a role-playing game. So, first of all, we need to define what a skill is. And the way that I see it is that skills is different from other attributes. That means attributes or stats or whatever. Because skills, they are based on knowledge, while attributes are based on characteristics. So what I mean about this is that skills, they are based on knowledge and experience. You are a skilled athlete, or you're skilled thief, or you're a skilled soldier. While attributes, they are more part of your characteristics as an individual or a person, which is you are strong, you are smart, or you are handsome. And this is why I think that skills and attributes are parallel to each other. They are not the same thing. You can be strong and you can be athletic, but it doesn't mean that because you're athletic, you're automatically strong, and because you're strong, you're automatically athletic. They are two different things. One comes from your knowledge and your experience of the topic of being athletic, while the other one comes from you training and working out and gaining muscle, which are two different things. Now, I can illustrate this by having, for instance, a person or two people, one who is athletic and one who is strong. Okay, I drew two goblins here. I don't really know why, but there's two goblins here. Now you have the athletic goblin and you have the strong goblin right here. And the difference between them is that, well, they can equally lift as much when it comes to lifting techniques. The athletic goblin is good at lifting techniques because he has the proper lifting technique and he knows how to utilize his muscles properly and therefore can more efficiently lift stuff because of his knowledge and experience. While the strong goblin here, he is strong, so he can lift more stuff, but it's not an efficient lifting technique, which again means that these two can lift equally much, but this guy is using more energy on his lift, but also has more energy to do the lift. So therefore, these two are at the same level when it comes to, I don't know, skill rolls or something in that manner. So The difference here between these two, just all goblins have red eyes. That's just how it is. The difference here is that the skilled goblin can use their athletic knowledge in different fields. They can see and look at, for instance, this goblin and see they are not using their proper lifting technique. They have the knowledge and the know-how in order to lift stuff, so they can point at somebody else and say, this is good, this is bad, this is what you should do, this is not what you should do, and so on. They can coach, they can teach, they can, well, just give out more knowledge, and they can receive more knowledge more efficiently. They can read through a book about athletics where all the terminology and all those things are in, and they will be able to understand that information a lot more easy than the strong goblin. And they can also, of course, look at and see if somebody is giving the wrong advice. They can see if there's a trainer who is just a hoax trainer, and so on. So as you can see, the skilled goblin here, he can utilize his knowledge in other fields within his expertise. However, the strong goblin is also different, because if he's not skilled in lifting stuff, he won't be able to, for instance, discern if a coach is being a hoax and doesn't know anything about proper lifting techniques, or he doesn't. He will just blindly believe the person that talks to him. And so, for instance, if you're doing a deception check, if a coach is doing some deception on you, this guy would be able to get a bonus, or it would be harder to convince him than it would be to convince him. Now, because he is strong, he can utilize his strength where that is applicable. He can swim better, he can climb better, he can do combat better. There's all these things that he can do because of his strength that this person can't do, this goblin can't do, because he doesn't have the strength and his knowledge is limited to only lifting stuff. And this is why these two things are in parallel. Now, with that said, I want both skills and attributes in my game. However, there are legitimate reasons why you only want to have skills, but there's very few reasons why you only should have attributes. Now, you can have skills and only skills if all the people are basically the same. So, for instance, I would say, like in D&D, you have a broad mashup of people. It's different races, they're from, and all the different people within that race is very varied. Somebody can be strong, somebody can be smart, and so on. But if you're limiting yourself to this here role-playing game will only be, you will only be playing a super soldier, right? Then all the characteristics are the same for all the super soldiers, because they're all equally strong, they're all equally smart, and they've been, I don't know, genetically enhanced something. So if everybody you're playing is basically the same person within the characteristics, then you can drop this, make the game more simple, just say, no, we don't need attributes, and just focus on the skills. Now, with that said, how do you implement skills? Well, there's two different things that we need to focus on when it comes to skills. A skill, and each skill has to be, first of all, useful, and second of all, balanced compared to the other skills. Now, useful means that it has to be part of the game. It has to have a function within the game. For instance, when it comes to my game, which is a medieval fantasy game, driving is not a useful skill because nobody knows how to drive. My game won't happen to have anything about driving, so it's not a useful skill. And this has to do with the player should never be able to do the wrong choice. And by wrong choice, I mean it's different from being suboptimal. Suboptimal choice would be that if you, for instance, in D&D, if the campaign is much more focused on combat and dungeon crawling, for instance, then using a persuasion skill or selecting the persuasion skill is suboptimal. It's not the best choice you could have, but it could work in some circumstances. But in the same scenario, if the player has the option to choose both persuasion and diplomacy, they're basically the same thing. If you are talking to a guard and wanting them to let you pass through, persuasion will persuade them to do this, and diplomacy will make you able to come up with a trade or an agreement in so that you can pass through. And so the outcome is the same. Both of them will be applicable in the same circumstances. You're just choosing the same choice twice over, which will be a wrong choice compared to a suboptimal choice, which is just this here is less useful, while the wrong choice is this is not useful. That's the difference. And this is why I think about usefulness and balance in sort of this way right here. So in a game, there's infinitely amounts of different actions that you can do. I'm not denying that you can do it, but let's just assume that this circle here are all the possible actions that could happen within the role-playing game, right? And these are the actions that you have or could take in an upcoming role-playing game. So these are your actions. So you have a set of actions that you do, and they're just a part of all the possible actions that you could do. Now, a skill should fall somewhere around here. That is where the skill should be. It should be that it has a broad definition. It's balanced. It's broad definition. It's you can utilize it in many different actions. You can utilize it a lot, and your actions that you can take or have taken should overlap with them to a certain degree, right? I think it's important to look at this here as you can do a certain amount of actions and your skills should complement a fraction of them, and then leave a huge possible amount of actions that you can't you don't do. You can do them, but you didn't do them. Because the thing is that when a second player comes along here, if they have the same skill, they will be able to do the same actions as you. Right here you can see they can use the same actions. They can, let's say if this is athletics, they can climb just like you do, right? But there's certain parts within the game where you shine, where you utilize your athletic skills in some ways where this player doesn't. And the same way here, there's some certain circumstances where the player B does their actions where you don't shine, you're not the best person. It shifts right here. And there's some place in between where you both shine and where you both could even teamwork and work together and do the same thing. Now, let's assume that you instead had this useless skill, or I mean, this here would be an unbalanced skill. This here is an unbalanced skill. So an unbalanced skill would mean that it overlaps both of you, right? So both of you does the same action. That means that there's no difference between you two people when it comes to that action. So for instance, lockpicking is a definite case on this, because you only need one person that does the lockpicking, because, well, there's only one door, and whenever the door is open, well, the door is open for everyone. If you had the choice, if the party has the choice between using the best lockpicker and the second best lockpicker, they would always choose the best lockpicker. Now, the only thing that could make this more balanced is if the skill has some sort of trade-off. The skill itself is you can only lockpick once in a while, or utilize the skill once in a while, and therefore you first use the best lockpicker, then you use the second lockpicker, something. But this is an unbalanced skill. And of course a useless skill is over here, or maybe even over here. Now, with that said, you should therefore also have all the skills. So this is here skill A, and this is skill B. You should always aim to have them equally big, and that, well, you can't really control how much they overlap with different characters, and that will vary somewhat, but you should at least playtest and see what works and what doesn't. But this is how you should do it. You should make them useful, and you should make them balanced equally. The amount of possible actions should be the same. And this is one of the things that I don't like about, for instance, D&D, and how you have deception, persuasion, intimidation, and diplomacy. There's 4 skills, and they overlap much of the time. There are, of course, circumstances where diplomacy or persuasion or whatever is preferred, but in a vast majority of the possible actions that you could do, all of these overlap somewhat. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make one larger skill that is just social something. I don't know what to call it, but one larger skill that doesn't overlap with other skills. The sort of last question is, should you have a skill tree? And with what I mean about a skill tree is that you might have, let's say, athletics, which then goes to climbing, and goes to, I would say, combat. and then combat would go to fencing and brawling, etc. The question is, should you do it this way? No. Maybe. No, probably yes. The thing is, again, when you're dividing up your skills in this way and saying you are good at athletics, and in order to become great at fencing, you have to go through all of these hoops in order to become great at fencing. This, first of all, it complicates your game, which isn't a bad or good thing. It's just a characteristics of your game, a property of your game. But for each time you're doing this, you're saying fencing is part of combat. And so if you have here, you have, this is athletics, and then combat is a small portion of that, and fencing is a small portion of that. As you can see, you're narrowing each time you're going into this, building into this skill tree, you're narrowing down the amount of actions that your player can do. Because if you're extremely good at fencing, it doesn't help you climb. And that is why I'm saying no, you should not have skill trees. Maybe. Now, it's bad for the balance of your game if you're narrowing down the different skills that is possible to get an advantage on. Having a +10 bonus on that one action that you could happen 3 or 4 times during a campaign, it's not very balanced if you could get 10 different or 1,000 different actions with a +1 bonus on it. So this is why each time you should, if each time you want to shrink down and create the skill tree where you say climbing is better, then that bonus should be skyrocketing up higher, because it's not the same as saying, okay, you can have +1 in athletics and +2 and +3, but in order to get that +4 you need to specialize into climbing and so on. You should instead say, okay, you can get +1, +2 or +3, you can choose climbing, then you will get +10, +15, +20, and then, or if you're going to the fencing, you get a +30, +40, and +50, something. It should be that the bonus that you get from choosing a smaller niche is greater, and that is how you solve that. So let's circle back to what should I do in my game. So I'm talking now about my vertical slice edition. As I talked about last episode, I'm creating a vertical slice edition where I'm creating characters, pre-generated characters, and going through a small portion of the game to just test out and see what happens. And what I've come up with is basically 5 characters, and well, since this is a test game, I'm going to diversify them slightly, having different roles. I'm not sure if I want classes or whatever. They're just going to be different archetypes, and I'm not quite sure which kind of archetype yet, so I'll get back to that in a different episode. But each of them I think should have 2 skills. I'm not quite sure if 2 skills is good or bad. I'm thinking it might be on the low side. As you might have remembered from the resolution system, I changed it up so that skills and attributes has a die. And that means that if you don't have a skill, you don't have a die, which again means that whenever you're rolling and you're not skilled at, for instance, athletics, so you can't climb stuff efficiently, you're only using one die. But getting only a d4 die or a d6 die in any skill will just boost this here up enormously. It's yeah, you will get so much more value out of having a d4 rather than having no skill die. So I want to test this out, see how it works, and therefore I think 2 skills is probably on the low side, but I'm gonna try it. Okay, so 2 skills, and they're going to overlap slightly. So here I have 9 skills. That means that 1 or 2 of the 2 characters here, or the 5 characters here, will have 1 skill overlap. I want to just test it out and see what happens, because the overlap will help me decide if a lot of overlap is needed or not, if people need to have more skills and skill points, so that if 2 is not enough, you need to diversify and have more skills. And I can test if the assisting mechanic, where you can use others' skill die if you help them, if that works. So again, I'm not there yet. I'm not with these 2 skills. I'm still testing the waters in order to understand how my resolution mechanics works and if it is possible to do it in this way. So yeah, this is what I got. I mean, martial arts, diplomacy. Martial arts also means anything combat related. My game isn't supposed to be combat related, so I won't have a different combat section and rounds and all these things. So I'm just chucking all of this into martial arts. Then you have diplomacy, which is just diplomacy, which will help in the refuge stage. It won't help that much in the castle exploration stage, other than maybe I mean, there will be goblins there, so at some point, so diplomacy with the goblins could work. Obfuscation, which is basically just hiding stuff or obscuring stuff, which could be good for many reasons. I'm not sure if it will be useful in the particular setting that I'm working in right now, which is just the entrance. So this is an important thing that I want to look at, if people use this skill somehow. Okay, acrobatics, which again could overlap with athletics in many circumstances, but there's many circumstances where acrobatics and athletics are separate. Then you have religion, history, and nature, which is just your knowledge about religion, history, and nature. So nature, that means plants, and what plants are poisonous, what can heal you, what can herbs, and whatever, like all these things. And then of course you have survival, which is just how to survive, how to forage, how to set up camp, shelter, so on, which will be useful sometimes during exploration and sometimes during the refuge stage. So yeah, these are what I'm working on, and I hopefully I will be able to do some character work next episode, but I'll get there. Yeah. So this is an update, and it's my philosophy regarding how skills should be implemented. If you have a different opinion than mine, I'll just put it in the comment section and let's discuss this. And of course, like, share, subscribe, and well, share this with your GM, because he will probably like it, or she will probably like it. I don't discriminate. See you around.